Hey, it's Soul, and this is Warcraft Weekly, the show that's kind of like a hot box, but it's full of copium. Side effects of overdosing include sometimes looking like this. In all seriousness though, it's hard to not feel excited about this week's news and our outlook on World of Warcraft in general. However, I'm gonna do my best to throw water on the hype. Hit the like button, subscribe for more content, and welcome folks to Season 1 of Dragonflight. Although, does it really feel that much different? For some, the game has truly begun. The start of Season 1 means the start of Big 3 content with raids and Mythic Plus and rated PvP. The race to World First is underway, but there isn't too much to comment on right now. It's just like the real stuff isn't going to start until someone gets to those last bosses on Mythic. Maybe the best strat is to farm keys and splits on week 1 while jacking the strats of other people. It keeps the team rested, and then when it's game time, you slingshot to the front of the pack, you demoralize the enemy, and you finish them off. That's probably not the most far-off prediction to make. Overall, I'm anxious to see if and how this early release is going to make a difference on top teams. Before we continue, I gotta take a second to thank the awesome sponsor of today's show, Into the AM. A lot of folks have loved the shirts that I sport, and that is why I'm proud to partner with Into the AM again with these awesome shirts. Into the AM shirts are all about vibrant colors, far-out designs, and comfort. These shirts use a polycotton blend so they don't shrink as much in the wash. I'm wearing a medium right now, and it feels like a hug. Best thing about it is that with our partnership, I can offer you all a discount, and you know I love saving that money. There's a fat sale going on over this weekend, but by clicking the link in the description below or by going to intotheam.com/soul, you can get an additional 10% off your order. So check them out and decide for yourself. You'd be helping out the channel and you'd maybe get a shirt or a few. Meanwhile, on the PvP side of things, it's the usual business until you look at Solo Shuffle. Although I've yet to do one, mind you. As a protection paladin, I'm basically a healer, and that's got me a little bit nervous to even sign up, but we'll see if I can gather the courage for it. I'm hearing reports though, like here and there, that queue times are pretty long, which I think is pretty understandable too. After all, we're looking at a longer series of matches, but more importantly, there's lots of people trying it out, which in a feature where everyone is eligible to queue up, there are never enough healers. And Mythic Plus, of course, is Mythic Plus. I can only speak on this personally, but so far, I've been having a pretty good time. I'm letting the team drag me out for keys. Sometimes it results in them bringing some pugs, which feels pretty The highest I've done as of this recording, I've done an 8. It gets a little dicey at times because of raging and not having much gear, but I'm sure that with a bit more item level, we'll be able to clear 10s, no problem, with the buff that we get from the Thundering affix. The stuff going on outside of the big 3, in the realm of world content, is the continued scramble to get the player economy working. This week with the season, Primal Invasions debuted with a few very welcome surprises. Now, for one, the invasions just keep on happening. It's on a pretty random rotation, and each one lasts for about 2 hours or so, but once it's done, we just see another random series. So this is great for folks who have less time on their hands and just want a little bit more stuff to farm for. And the invasions themselves, they don't seem to cause like this massive spike in difficulty either. It's more like adding a minor affix to mobs in the affected area. Now, I'm bringing up these invasions not just because it's an activity or a source to get some low gear, but to also get a top tier recipe. It's a neck piece called the Elemental Lariat, which is going for a ton of gold right now. For crafters and clients, this is the week of the Jewel Crafter. Most competitive players are using their sparks of ingenuity to make this thing, and while there are other crafting recipes that appear from the new raid, lots of folks who are making a choice are, of course, going to try to make the most efficient choice. But there's still a lot of money to be made for people who have specialized deep into a certain thing, whether it's like necks, or rings, or a weapon, or a shield. I think the season's off to a really interesting start. It's not the best, it's not a disaster, it's a mixed bag where players are dealing with this growing economy and a new PvP mode and otherwise a lot of activities without the obligations. Now I'd love to hear some of your stories, the good, the bad, the disastrous. Maybe we can offer you a few tips because we're all here to help each other out. In what's not so big of a surprise, the 10.05 patch is being deployed onto the BTR, although as of this recording, the realms are not up yet. It's not the flimsy band-aid that the 9.05 patch from Shadowlands was either, because first off, it's got a bunch of class changes, some of which are pretty extensive. I'm going to let you folks take a look for yourselves. You can check the link in the description below for that, but this lines up with predictions that, thanks to how much easier it is for players to change their builds or even to switch to another main, they have fewer problems with making making sweeping changes to classes. Now this is a far cry from classes feeling locked during Shadowlands balancing because the team didn't want a situation where players felt bad about their Covenant or Legendary choices. 10.05 is also making good on features that didn't make it for launch. Trash and common transmog items are finally going to start being a thing. All you have to do is, okay, the first thing you probably want to do is turn off the add-ons that auto-vendor the trash, equipables, but then you just got to put those things on. They'll become soulbound to you, and that seems to be about it. I think we can expect another big market disruption as these items flood the auction house, but keep in mind that this is technically gear, and it's probably not going to be thrown onto the regional market, which is probably a good thing. Personally, I already have enough trouble managing my inventory, so I haven't gotten into the idea of holding on to items in the meantime. Now, it would be kind of cool to, wander the land after this patch comes out and see all this random stuff from mobs and vendors and more that I can add to my collection. For those of us who are really into Warlords crafting, they're also making it so that we can craft the different ranks of armor that were available throughout the expansion. More transmog, more problems, more random. And artifact weapons will be able to have the enchant illusions added to them. Also, very cool. The star of the 10.05 patch though is the trading post, which I've already talked about quite a bit already with regards to how it works, so let's focus on some of the specifics that have been data mined courtesy of the Wowhead team, because apparently the WoW team doesn't give a damn about encryption, or it's their way of advertising or welcoming us in. Here's the list of items known so far. There's this bow over here, there's a cloak transmog, there's a few ensembles, including this really sick set of Warden outfits. There's that Fury of the Firelord Flail Mog and the Celestial Steed for the 900 Tender and an Ogre Pet, and also this newer mount, which is not unlike the Spectral Tiger mount, which goes for 999 Tender, which by the way is the currency that's used for this feature. Now let's take a look at the different tasks that will help us max out our Tender for the month. So, for example, we're gonna do grand hunts or do a Tuskar feast soup thing. Okay, there's objectives that involve current content, but there's also really casual stuff like use the love emote in front of the dragon aspects. Further down, there are timing-specific objectives, which tells me that this patch is going to release no later than February 7th. It's a safe guess, so mark your calendars. Some of these are pretty random looking, like resurrect players, create 20 auctions, participate in the Dark Moon Fair or the micro holidays, or hug dead players. Between these things that can be done is a lot of variety and a lot more points than you need for a given month. I find this to be a good start, but I would like to see more old world variety stuff, such as, defeating certain dungeon bosses, and that requirement can be fulfilled either through time walking or just blowing through low level content. But whatever the case, this is like easy stuff, seriously. It's made to be maxed out, and it would take some effort to not get enough points for the month. One question that has yet to be answered, does the tender that we earned over the course of a month roll over to the next month? Like, can it be hoarded, or is the intent for it to reset each month? Because that's going to change player behavior a little bit. It would mean that we're compelled to spend all of our points each and every month, so we constantly are buying rewards until we run out of stuff to buy. Now, that's not a bad way to do it, it just means that for the most part, this feature will always feel rewarding as long as a trickle of items continue to be added. It also kills the idea of saving multiple months worth of points so you can binge it on something else, or, saving points for a really crazy thing like a Brutosaur or a version of the Spectral Tiger mount, which is coming already, because, well, in this case, it looks like nothing is going to ever cost more than the point cap. If we could hoard points, then we could be a bit more picky and choosy, but also it turns the feature into something that, again, it's not going to feel rewarding each month. It's only going to feel rewarding when we find something that we want. Now, I don't think either is a bad approach. I just feel like having points reset each month is what I would prefer over, saving up points. Now I want to take a step back and just kind of see where we're at with Dragonflight. Season 1 started, the economy is a little bit weird, but it's thriving. We live in a World of Warcraft that has stripped away obligations, so we can just, kind of do what we want to do, including no-life grinding everything. 10.05 is bringing us a bona fide evergreen feature, a very simple and casual reward structure for mostly being present, with at least some reassurances that these items will rotate in and out. This fulfills the mandate of wanting to make more evergreen content that's independent of the current expansion or story. The initial presentation of Dragonflight is the WoW team showing us the direction that WoW itself is going. Meanwhile, minor patches have usually been more about casual content, and yet we're also seeing WoW make long-term investments in this direction. This week we learned that Chris Metzen has returned to the Blizzard leadership team as a creative advisor with an emphasis on World of Warcraft and the Warcraft franchise. It appears that this was inside knowledge as early as late 2021, according to Bloomberg reporter Jason Schreier. The circumstances as to why he returned are speculative. What exactly will he be doing, or what has he already done? Also speculation. It's been drilled into our heads that the WoW team plans expansions years in advance. Maybe Metzen was part of Dragonflight planning. Maybe he's focusing less on the big plot points and more putting more emphasis on smaller stories, which I think WoW really shines at. Maybe he'll be the one who manages to get Henry Cavill to split his time between the upcoming Warhammer series and another Warcraft movie. It's hard to say. But between the Dragonflight launch, what we're learning that's coming in 10.05, and Metzen's return, it's a lot of big news. It brings this feeling of optimism and hopium, a certain pride and excitement in being a WoW fan. You bet that there are smaller discussions among fans wondering if big names from the WoW team will be returning. Okay, not every big name, but the good big names. At the same time, underneath all the Metzen hype, there's still some grumbling. He was part of the old guard. Like, how much of anything did he allegedly know that's contained in the multiple Blizzard lawsuits? Are we forgiving him just because Dragonflight seems to be doing well and now he's coming back? That is a question for each of you to answer for yourselves. But again, when we step back, it's hard to not feel good about how WoW is doing these days. The expansion is out, and this is my personal take, but the hype is still there. Last time I felt like this was during Legion, when we were drunk off of all the new bells and whistles and we're already looking forward to the return of Karazhan dungeon. I mean, what's going on isn't exactly at the same scale, but it just feels good. In the meantime, Chris Metzen's return doesn't mean much until we start seeing what he does or what he has done. But the announcement of his return, regardless of the actual reason, that's symbolic. It's like, welcome back to World of Warcraft. Look at what has changed. Look at who's coming back. It's time to get excited. We could also say, hey, look how desperate BLIZZ is for subs by doing things that make players happy. That's the show. My team and I got 4 whole bosses down this week. Yeah. And then the 5th one just kind of tossed us around like piles of trash. It was still an interesting start to the week, though. As a guild, we got a gauge of our strengths and weaknesses. We know that we're woefully behind on gearing, and we're working on it. I'm already finding the prep game to be more engaging than Shadowlands was because, well, mostly of the crafting. It's tougher to do. I'm relying more and more on the guild to provide materials, and, I'm trying to do the same. While legendaries in Shadowlands just took way too long to get set up, and it was really hard for guild members to help each other out with crafted gear. Thankfully, though, it's pretty fun to be out there doing mounted gathering, looking for crap on the ground and more, and I hope that the guild feels like they're being useful with their contributions or are using these resources, so we're going to see how next week comes about. And next week is going to be pretty big. We're going to probably see some prices of stuff dip as enchanting mats start to fill the market a bit more, but also it's going to be consumed as gear is replaced. Resources as a whole, I think, are going to pile up a bit until the following week when another crafting spark is expected to show up. Meanwhile, streaming in the afternoon has been okay so far. It's a different sort of energy when I pop in. I'm full from lunch and I'm still chugging down coffee. It would be great to see more of you folks, so feel free to drop by when I'm live, and after the new year, I'm gonna make, maybe a more final decision on whether I want to keep hanging out in the morning, or maybe do afternoons, or mix it up. I'd love your feedback in the meantime. Whatever the case, though, I'm grateful for the continued support over on Twitch. This was clearly my biggest month ever, and it's all downhill from here. But I also want to give a huge thanks to all the patrons for sticking it out, and of course to you, viewer, for making it to the end. We're almost at the end of 2022, but Dragonflight is just getting started. I hope you join me for more content by subscribing to the channel and catching me live on stream. Like the video too, that helps, and that's gonna be it for me. Until then, stay safe. You know the drill, right? Yeah, thanks. How do you mess up the last line? How do you mess up the last line? Stay safe, stay healthy, and